We need to talk about something that is happening right now at airports across the United States, something that could affect your ability to travel, your ability to come back home, and possibly your entire future in this country. And if you are someone who travels internationally, if you are a student, a worker, a green card holder, or someone with family abroad, you need to hear this, because what people are experiencing at immigration checkpoints is changing fast. And the stories coming in are not just frustrating, they are genuinely frightening. Imagine you just landed after visiting your family for 2 weeks. You have done this trip a dozen times before. You are tired, you are ready to go home. You walk up to the officer, hand over your passport, and instead of the usual quick questions and a stamp, the officer pauses, looks at the screen longer than normal, then looks at you and says, "Step aside, please." And suddenly you are being escorted into a separate room with no explanation, no timeline, no idea what is happening. And you sit there for 1 hour, then 2, watching other travelers come and go, some looking relieved, others visibly shaken, and you start replaying every detail of your trip, every answer you gave, every document you brought, wondering what you did wrong, wondering if you were about to lose everything you have built here. And that fear, that sinking uncertainty, is something more and more people are facing right now. And it is not just one type of traveler. It is students returning from winter break, professionals coming back from business trips, couples who went on vacation, even longtime residents who thought their status was solid. People are being pulled into secondary inspection at rates that feel different, that feel heavier, and the questions are more detailed, the scrutiny is more intense, and the consequences of being unprepared or having even a small inconsistency in your story are starting to feel much more serious. So what is actually going on? Why are so many travelers reporting longer wait times, more aggressive questioning, and a sense that the rules have somehow shifted, even though no one can point to an official announcement? Well, the reality is that immigration officers at ports of entry have always had broad authority to question travelers, to verify documents, and to decide who gets admitted. That is not new, but what people are noticing is that the way that authority is being exercised feels different. The checks feel more thorough, the questions feel more probing, and the tolerance for vague answers or missing paperwork feels much lower. And whether this is due to internal policy shifts, increased training, heightened security concerns, or political pressure, the result is the same. Travelers are experiencing more stress, more uncertainty, and more fear when they try to come back into the country. And the problem is that most people do not realize how vulnerable they are until they are sitting in that secondary inspection room with no idea how long they will be there or what the outcome will be. Let me paint a picture of what this looks like in real life. You are an international student. You flew home for the holidays. You had a great time with your family. You are coming back to start your spring semester. You hand over your passport and your student visa paperwork. The officer asks where you go to school. You tell them. They ask what you are studying. You answer. They ask how long you have been in the program. And you hesitate for just a second because you are not sure if they mean since you first started or since your most recent enrollment. And that hesitation, that one moment of uncertainty, causes the officer to ask another question, then another, and now they are looking at your travel history, asking why you went home twice last year, asking if you have been working, asking if your documents are up to date. And suddenly, what should have been a 2-minute interaction turns into an hour-long ordeal where you are trying to prove that you are a legitimate student and that you deserve to be let back in. And even if everything is fine, even if your paperwork is perfect, the stress of that experience is real, and it is something that more students are talking about right now. Or maybe you are on a work visa, you traveled abroad for a family emergency, you come back and the officer asks about your employer, you tell them the company name, they ask what you do there, and you try to explain your job, but you use slightly different wording than what is on your approval paperwork, and now the officer is asking more questions, asking if your role has changed, asking if you are still doing the work you were approved for, and you start to panic because you are worried that your explanation is not matching up exactly with the documents. And even though you have done nothing wrong, the fear that one wrong word could get you denied entry is overwhelming. Or maybe you are married to a U.S. citizen, you have a green card, you went overseas to visit your sick parent, you were gone for 4 months, and when you come back, the officer asks why you were gone so long, where your spouse is, why you did not travel together, and you try to explain, but the questions keep coming, and you start to feel like you are being interrogated, like they think your marriage is fake or that you are not really living in the U.S. And even though you have every right to travel, the experience leaves you shaken and afraid to leave the country again. These are not made-up scenarios. These are the kinds of experiences people are describing right now. And the common thread is that small things that seem minor or insignificant, are suddenly becoming reasons for extended questioning. Maybe your passport is close to expiring. Maybe you have traveled a lot in the past year. Maybe you took a semester off from school. Maybe you switched jobs. Maybe your answers at the counter are not perfectly consistent with your paperwork. Maybe you seem nervous or unsure. Any of these things can trigger additional scrutiny. And once you are flagged for secondary inspection, you lose control of the situation. You cannot talk your way out. You cannot demand to be let through. All you can do is wait and hope that your documents hold up under review. So who is most at risk right now? Honestly, it is hard to say because the patterns are not always clear. But there are certain groups that seem to be facing more questions than others. International students, especially those who have taken time off, those who have had gaps in enrollment, those who are working under optional practical training or curricular practical training, those who have traveled frequently, or those whose schools have had compliance issues, are being asked detailed questions about their academic status, their work authorization, their financial support, and their intent to return. And if your answers are vague or if your documents are not perfectly up to date, that can create serious problems. Work visa holders, especially those who have recently changed employers, those whose companies have gone through layoffs or restructuring, those who are between jobs, or those whose visa status is tied to a specific position, are being asked to prove that they are still employed, that their work authorization is valid, and that they are doing the job they were approved for. And if you cannot provide clear documentation, or if your explanation does not match what is on file, that raises red flags. People on marriage-based visas or green cards are being asked detailed questions about their relationships, where they live, how long they have been married, why they are traveling without their spouse, and whether they have maintained their residence in the U.S. And if your answers sound rehearsed or inconsistent, or if you cannot provide proof of your shared life together, that can lead to further investigation. Green card holders who travel frequently, who spend long periods of time outside the U.S., or who have weak ties to the country, are being questioned about whether they have abandoned their permanent residence, and if the officer believes you are living abroad and just using your green card to visit, that can result in your green card being taken away right there at the airport. People with past immigration violations, overstays, denied applications, or unresolved issues, even if those issues are old or were supposedly fixed, are finding that those problems can resurface during questioning, and if you are not prepared to address them honestly and clearly, that can derail your entry. The key takeaway here is that no one is completely safe, even if you think your status is solid, even if you have traveled without problems before, even if you have done everything right. The current environment is unpredictable, and being unprepared is a risk you cannot afford to take. So what can you do to protect yourself? First and most importantly, before you travel internationally, sit down and review your entire immigration history. know your timeline, know your visa category, know your work authorization, know your school enrollment status, know your travel dates, know your addresses, know everything. And if there is anything you are unsure about, anything that could be questioned, get advice from a qualified professional before you leave, not after you land. Second, make sure all your documents are current, valid, and organized. Your passport should not be expiring soon. Your visa should be valid. Your work authorization should be up to date. Your school paperwork should be signed and current, and you should have copies of everything, physical and digital, in your carry-on bag. Because if an officer asks for documentation and you do not have it, that makes you look unprepared and suspicious. Third, be very clear and very consistent in your answers. If you are asked about your job, your school, your residence, your travel, your relationships, answer clearly, confidently, and truthfully. Do not guess, do not exaggerate, do not lie, and do not give contradictory information, because inconsistencies are what trigger deeper investigations. Fourth, understand that how you present yourself matters. Be calm, be respectful, be patient. Do not argue, do not get defensive, do not act nervous or evasive, because your demeanor can influence how the officer perceives you. And if you seem like you are hiding something, they will dig deeper. Fifth, if you do get pulled into secondary inspection, do not panic. Yes, it is stressful. Yes, it is scary, but panicking will only make it worse. Cooperate fully. Answer the questions you are asked. Provide the documents they request, and wait. And if you do not understand a question, ask for clarification. Do not just guess. Sixth, be aware that certain things can increase your risk: frequent travel, long absences from the U.S., gaps in status, changes in employment or enrollment, traveling to certain countries, having a criminal record, having past immigration violations. All of these things can lead to additional scrutiny. So if any of these apply to you, be extra prepared. Seventh, do not travel unless you absolutely have to. I know that sounds extreme, but right now the risk is real. And if you can delay a trip, if you can avoid international travel until your status is more secure, or until the environment feels less uncertain, that might be the safest choice. Eighth, if you are in the U.S. on a temporary visa and you are thinking about traveling, ask yourself if it is worth the risk, because every time you leave and try to come back, you are putting your status in the hands of an immigration officer. And if something goes wrong, if you are denied entry, you could lose everything: your job, your school, your life here. So weigh that risk carefully. And finally, understand that this is not about fear-mongering. This is not about telling you that you will definitely be detained or deported. This is about making sure you are informed, prepared, and aware of what is happening, because the worst thing you can do right now is assume everything will be fine and then get caught off guard at the airport with no idea what to do. The bottom line is this: awareness and preparation are your best protection. You cannot control what happens at the airport. You cannot control what questions you will be asked. You cannot control how long you will be detained, but you can control how prepared you are. You can control the quality of your documentation. You can control the consistency of your answers. And you can control your level of understanding about your own immigration status. And those things matter. They matter a lot, because in a situation where you have very little power, being prepared is the one thing that can make a difference. Please understand that this video is for general informational and educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. It is not affiliated with any government authority, and it should not be relied upon as a substitute for consultation with a qualified immigration attorney or professional who can review your specific circumstances and provide guidance tailored to your individual situation. Every case is different. Immigration law is complex and constantly evolving. And what applies to one person may not apply to another. So if you are concerned about your ability to travel or your immigration status, please seek personalized advice from someone who is licensed and qualified to help you.